That's the first thing we do, is getting that team connected and starting to build trust with one another. The next is getting the team very, very aligned. Immediately where we see trust go up in teams, we can see between a 20 and 40% improvement in productivity of that team.
Welcome to the Marketing Boost Solutions Podcast. Join host Marco Torres, co-founder of MarketingBoost.com, along with expert guests as they deliver incredible, proven solutions to your marketing challenges in each power-packed episode. Captain Marco has guided thousands of entrepreneurs, growing their sales and marketing through the use of value-add incentives. His Facebook groups are home to more than 84,000 entrepreneurs who are raking in sales with his advice. Get ready to be blown away with game-changing lessons for your business.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Marketing Boost Solutions Podcast. I've got a great guest today, James Burroughes. He's a former Army officer, MBA grad, and a former corporate high-flyer turned leadership expert on a mission to help organizations all over the planet achieve 10x results without burning out. James Burroughes is a seasoned leader who's not your typical leadership guru, with over 2 decades of military experience as a British military officer with a proven track record in major global organizations. Jimmy is on a mission to change the way we think about business success. He's not just an author, he's the mind behind Beat the Burnout. Beat Burnout. So say hello, Jimmy.
Hello, Marco, and hello, listeners. Lovely to be here. Thanks so much for welcoming me to the show with a wonderful introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I look forward to this chat because burnout is probably something many of us experience without even realizing it is burnout. You just start slowing down. And well, how would you define burnout? Let's start with that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's often one that comes up because I think burnout has become a bit of a buzzword in modern organizations. It used to be I'm busy, now it's I'm burning out. And I think it's useful to differentiate burnout from being stressed out or worn out or tired out. It's when all of those and more come into reality. And when we look at it from a neuroscience perspective, which I think is, an interesting place to start, it's when essentially you've been living in your energy overdraft for too long, and suddenly the bank has come to collect. And you are in a state of, I call it mental treacle or mental quicksand. It's really hard to kind of keep going. You're potentially feeling overwhelmed. But that moment where you switch from super stressed out about something to having not even enough energy to care about it anymore, or not even seeing the point in it anymore, that's when we start to pay attention to it being burnout. And it's essentially when you've exhausted all those neurotransmitters, when you've exhausted your energy levels to the point where you can't get excited about things anymore. You feel so alone. And I remember sitting when I burned out in 2017, I remember sitting on the bed and saying, Jimmy, I'm not sure that you can go to work today. I'm not sure you've got it in you anymore. Maybe it's time for you to think about doing something else. And when people get to that point, then we start seeing burnout. And my job, my organization's role, is to essentially stop that happening. We want to keep people paying the mortgage. We want to keep you earning money. We want to keep you getting the promotions and having the impact that you desire, without that spiral or the plug hole effect that a lot of leaders get themselves into.
How'd you get into that role? I mean, Jimmy, where you've how did you say a background in the military and everything else? What made you decide to focus on the burnout part?
Well, it's interesting because we actually focus on high performance.
Okay.
And what I think is interesting is in a lot of organizations, they measure low performance to high performance. We measure culture from burnout to high performance. And what we know is when you have a high performance culture, it delivers high performance results, it delivers profits, and it delivers shareholder returns, and it delivers growth. And so when I left the corporate world in 2017, I'd burned out myself. I was working 16 plus hours a day. I was traveling all the time around different countries. I was running an 8-figure business. I had a team of people, but I was still getting up at 4 a.m. to write board papers and present online before sort of remote work was even a thing. We were using Skype in those days to dial into board meetings. And I just got to the point where I was drinking a bottle of wine each night to try and wind down, drinking a couple of bottles of Coke Zero in the morning to get going again, drifting between meetings in a sort of cloud where I was like, I don't know what I'm even doing in this meeting. Like, what is this for? And just trying to do all the things. And this is something that often happens with the people we meet, is they're involved in everything. They're everywhere all the time. And it came to a head for me in 2017. And so I decided to leave the corporate world and went off on a journey of self-reflection. I had the luxury of 6 months out just to recover, to understand what had happened to me, and to try and work out why. And over the time I was taking some time out, I got involved in the digital nomad scene before COVID made everybody know what a digital nomad was. And as I was on this group going around Latin America, I started talking to other people who were on the trip who had experienced and told me a very similar story. And so we started sharing, what happened to you and why did that happen? So I started to understand more and more and more about it. And obviously, having been an army officer, high performance is the ticket to the game in the military. You have to win, otherwise you're dead. So I kind of have this mentality of we need to be high performers, and I took that into my corporate life, and then I took that into the consulting world. And after probably a year of talking to people in various organizations, some people reached out to me and asked me to build some leadership programs for them around the frame of high performance leadership. And that has just expanded and expanded over the last 6 years, where we now work with organizations who are potentially experiencing high turnover. They're experiencing a cultural challenge. They've got low engagement. They're not hitting their results. The individuals are maybe not getting the promotions they want, the pay rises. They're losing people to sick leave. And we go in with them and we partner based on my personal experiences, those initial conversations, and subsequently a whole lot of research into the neuroscience, the health, the well-being, and the commercial impacts of burnout. So that's essentially how we ended up doing what we do now.
Now, I'm a bit older than you. Just if you happen to be watching this on our YouTube channel, you can see I'm no spring chicken. So looking at this, and I recall in my experience growing up and in the business world, high performance was obviously, at least in my mind, always an expectation of myself. Maybe it was brought, from watching and what I saw from my parents. The burnout was never even something that I didn't even allow myself that to enter my, I've got to perform. I've got family. I've got kids to feed. I've got, so on and so forth. But in today's world, I see, I don't know if is it a generational thing? I see quite a bit of a difference. I mean, the challenges that leaders today face versus our parents, what do you see different today?
Look, I think there's 2 or 3 real linchpin moments that are causing what we're experiencing today. Number one would be just the sheer complexity. We call it the VUCA environment, the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environment that leaders today have to operate in. It's infinitely more complex than, for example, our parents' generation. To put that into context, in one day, most of us will process more data than our parents did in a month. So whether that's the number of emails, the number of phone calls, the number of interactions, the number of meetings, it is the level of intensity that people are operating at is significantly more complex. And the problems are harder to solve because the pace has picked up. So, imagine back 30 years ago, you would send a letter. It would take a few days to arrive with your client or your customer or whoever it might be. They would read it. They would dictate something which would be typed up, and that would be posted back. So to get that response and to take some action would be a few days. Now we can do it in a few minutes. And so that expectation of responsiveness is significantly higher. The second piece, I think, is around we have a generation of underinvestment in leadership development. So, if you think back to all of the lean programs, cost-cutting measures, and stripping out layers of management, you've now got leaders who have potentially been promoted very quickly into leadership roles. there's a significant gap between when people get their first leadership training and when they get their first leadership role. According to Gallup, which is a global engagement organization, it's a 16-year gap. So people have been leading people for 16 years before they get some leadership training. Now, I'm not talking about the Management 101 program, which is, how to delegate and how to tell your team a performance review. I'm talking about leadership, which is a whole different mindset from management. And that lack of investment over time in all of the different levels of leadership development that need to happen as you move up through an organization, from supervisor to team leader to manager frontline to manager of managers to leader of a business unit to leader of an organization. All of those require different things of you, but we don't train it. So, of course, you've now got organizations being led by people who are potentially unclear on some of those parameters or are struggling with some of those things because they're still thinking like managers. Or maybe they're not even thinking like managers. Maybe they're still down there in the weeds with their sleeves rolled up doing the hard work. And that can cause challenges for organizations. The third one is, again, we go back to that 25 years worth of lean process improvement, efficiency, all of those programs of work, agile, Six Sigma, all these have been rolled out in the last 25, 30 years. And so what's left is the hard stuff. We've fixed all the easy things. We've done all the easy process improvements because they're the ones you can do in a quarter or a year and get your KPIs. We've stripped out all the layers of management because it's cheaper to get rid of people than it is to work on the really hard stuff. So now what we're struggling with is leaders who are undertrained, who are working in an infinitely more volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environment, who are having to solve the really crunchy, difficult problems that are left in order to get those gains that are expected by shareholders. And of course, you layer all those things on top of each other, and we're going to have a position where people are starting to struggle to work out, what should I be prioritizing? Where should I be working? Where should I be putting my effort? And how am I going to do this? And that is I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. Am I actually making any difference? Oh, I'm suddenly burned out.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, how do you see that? I mean, why is that coming to a head now versus, is it because it does seem to be, I see that in my own organization a little bit when it comes to the leadership roles or what I expect, or my leadership ability, when I see my inability to communicate what I expect from some of the younger staff on our organization. Why is that coming to a head today, would you say?
Look, I don't think it's magically crept up on us. If we look at the data of, for example, employee disengagement, so this is employees who aren't giving their maximum effort at work because they don't particularly like their work. Before COVID, it was sitting at around 71%. Now it's sitting at around 74%. So the reality was poor leadership, the stretch of the individual employee, the stretch on leadership in terms of expectations, and under-skilled, under-capable organizations who are just trying to cut corners and find ways. And this is not meant to be a disrespectful statement. This is more I empathize, I get it, I've been there. But I think it has always been gathering momentum. I think since COVID, two things have happened. Number one, people's expectations of their employer and their workplace have shifted. We also have a whole new generation who've entered the workforce who have different expectations, who are the product of a different educational generation versus you or I. And so they're looking for different things from their leaders. They have different expectations of their leaders. And so they're now part of the workforce and putting extra demands on leadership and culture in organizations to deliver to those expectations to attract them. But equally, I think if this is not something that, say, has snuck up on us. I think it's something that's been building momentum over time. But since COVID, those change of expectations, well, I want to work from home now. I don't want to come into the office anymore. That puts additional pressure on leaders, because how do you communicate with your people when they're not in front of you? That's left many leaders struggling. And that's one of the areas we actually work on extensively in our ways of working program is how do you connect your team when they're not necessarily in the same room or in the same office as you? It's a challenge. It's a new challenge that's suddenly come up for us.
Absolutely.
Equally, a lot of organizations, inverted commas, fell behind during COVID because they were either trying to do it the way they've always done it, they didn't adapt, or they hoped that they got essentially missed KPIs that year, and they've been running to catch up ever since. But unfortunately, you can only run a marathon for so long, and you can't run a marathon at a sprint pace. And so a lot of organizations have been trying to catch up, inverted commas, from COVID, and have been sprinting with their teams for 3.5 years. And of course, people are exhausted. People have had a whole lot of new expectations put on them, have had to find new ways of working, are dealing with the struggles, maybe the financial limitations, the staff availability limitations, and covering all those gaps.
Sounds like you're describing. Sounds like you're describing the airline industry and the air traffic control industry, and they're
so many industries.
Yeah, so many industries in an attempt to catch up after the COVID disaster. One thing I'd like to mention here, I mean, we're in our community here of Marketing Boost. For those listening, or if it's your first time listening to Marketing Boost, we're a community of business owners that use our travel incentives. But the question I had here for you is, what makes the difference of the reaction between a manager and a leader when things get tough? And in our case, our community is mostly small entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, home-based business operations, or small companies with less than 10 employees. And I'm always one to coach that, I think one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is they tend to do too much themselves versus building a team and delegating things and hiring virtual assistants or whatever it takes to have a team of experts around them that are smarter than themselves at different areas of expertise, and building that leadership. But how do you, or what would you guide the smaller business owner when it comes to being the difference between being a manager and a leader, especially when things get tough?
Oh, look, we could spend days on that topic alone. we run a 6-month program which is focused on helping managers transition into leadership. But if I give a couple of examples to paint the picture, that might help, and they're ones that we use regularly. So the first one is, if your building was on fire, you're in your office space and you're the CEO of an organization or the managing director of an organization, and your building was on fire, what should you do? And I'll give the listeners a moment to think about, what should you do in a fire? And there'll be a couple of things that probably come to people's mind. Number one, evacuate the building, obviously. Number two would be potentially run around the building and make sure everybody's got out safely. So, knocking on all the doors, opening all the offices up, checking everybody's left the building. Number three would be making sure that you are in a position to set up an incident checkpoint or an incident rally point, knowing that's been done, moving to that location and making sure the people who are responsible for evacuating the building have done so, and making sure that you're in a position to make the next best decision that you need to make. And what we've described there is the individual contributor, the manager, or the leader. The leader is not responsible for doing the doing. The leader is responsible for doing the leading and making decisions. And one of the really kind of frequent things we see with leaders who are burning out, who are still acting like managers, is when there's a crisis, they're the first ones in there rolling their sleeves up, saving the day. They're the ones who, leave it with me, I'll work through the night, I'll work through the weekend, I'll take care of this, you guys just get on with your work. And immediately that person reduces their leadership capability, because they're not sitting, there's a crisis, okay, what do people think we should do? How are we going to solve this? Who is the best placed person to take care of this? If it is me, then maybe I need to work on developing some other people around me who, next time this happens, they can work alongside me this time and see what I do. But next time this happens, I can shadow them and support them. They're the types of questions we want to ask. And the simple way to look at it is a very simple maths calculation, actually. You take your annual salary. So let's make it round, easy numbers. We've got an annual salary of $100,000 a year, just to make it super simple. And we divide that by 2,048, which is the approximate number of hours an individual works on a yearly basis. approximate. And that's, we know that many people work 70, 80, 90 hours a week. Some people work 20 because they're part-time. That's fine. But for the sake of the maths equation, we'll take $100,000 and we'll divide it by 2,048. And that gives us $48 per hour is our going rate for the work that we do. And so what we see with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of startups and smaller organizations is you've got a leader of an organization who's earning X amount of money, and their going rate is, let's say, $48 an hour, but they're doing the $5 an hour tasks. They're doing the $15 an hour tasks. They're the ones that are in the social media chat answering comments. They're the ones that are helping to update the website. They're the ones that are cleaning the office space after everybody's gone home. And the reality is, if you're the CEO, if you're the leader of that business, whether you're the GM or the CEO or the MD or whatever level you're sitting at, you need to be doing $48 an hour tasks or your equivalent, because that's your skill set, that's your knowledge, and that's where you add the most value. Because people who earn $15 an hour or $5 an hour can't do the things you do. And if they could, they'd be you. So the reality at the moment is to say, stop doing the $5 and $15 an hour tasks, outsource those, delegate those, give those to somebody else, and focus on the $48 an hour task, because there where you're going to add value to your business, that's where the growth is going to happen. And that's where the biggest difference is going to come to your job satisfaction and your results.
That's one of the best ways I've heard that broken down, and get people to realize the mistake they're making as a leader or manager or business owner. How much of the stuff do you find yourself deciding to do? I think a lot of small business owners are like control freaks and what have you, especially because it's when you have an organization, when you're in the office, when you're a manager in the corporate world, I think it's maybe somewhat easier to get used to this role of delegating. But when you're the entrepreneur, you're part of it is like, well, two things happen. Yeah, I'm too cheap to hire people, and and then I also don't trust anybody else to do what they're not going to put in this. They're not going to do it as well as I could, so I might as well do it myself. And you find yourself doing, or I think entrepreneurs, I find them they trying to learn everything. They're trying to learn the software instead of hiring somebody to do it. They're trying to build their own website instead of hiring somebody to do it. They're doing, like you say, the $20 an hour job versus the $50 or $100 an hour job that they are at. So
absolutely. And
good.
When you're starting a business, and we've all most of I would think nearly all of the people who listen to this have started a business at some point. Until you're probably earning 10K a month, you do most of it yourself. You're bootstrapping your business. You're finding the cheap ways. You're asking your friends to help out. Once you're over that 10K a month, the first thing you should do is hire a virtual assistant or somebody to help you to get rid of those $5 an hour tasks. If you're still in Canva making flyers, if you're still doing the website, then there's a great phrase that I've heard, which is that your business will grow to match the size and complexity of the problems that you can solve. So if you're solving $5 problems, your business is going to stay at the $5 level. If you're focusing on the really crunchy $1 million complex problems, you can earn or win a client or make a sale that's going to get you $1 million. And so your focus needs to be on the stuff that's going to generate your business growth.
Can you say that one more time from the top? You said focus. If you're still doing the Canva or what have you, say that one more time.
Yeah, if you're still doing Canva flyers and you're posting on social media yourself and you're updating the website yourself or cleaning the offices, then you're limiting your own growth. And there's a well-known phrase that says your business will only grow to the size and complexity of the problems that you can solve.
That's the line
if you're focusing on $5 tasks, you get a $5 business. If you're focusing on $1 million problems, you can earn $1 million.
Cool. With that said, right there, let's take a moment break and hear from our sponsor, Marketing Boost. We'll be right back.
It's time to wow, surprise, and impress your clients with the most powerful customer draw card available anywhere. The Marketing Boost Solutions Show is brought to you by Marketing Boost, where you can get valuable travel and restaurant incentives to drive your leads from prospects to paying customers. Now you can offer complimentary hotel stays in over 130 destinations worldwide. Go to marketingboostsolutions.com and try it for free right now.
Welcome back to the Marketing Boost Solutions podcast. We're here talking about how to avoid burnout and build leadership versus management with Jimmy Burroughes. You just heard from Marketing Boost. One of the ideas with Marketing Boost is ways to incentivize your staff. You can use the Marketing Boost incentives, complimentary hotel stays, restaurant savings vouchers, hotel savings cards to reward your staff for jobs well done and help them from burning out. Give them the vacations they deserve as well. So just another way to use Marketing Boost. Back with Jimmy. Jimmy, we're here. You just gave us a great line here on making sure you're thinking big instead of thinking small. As you think small, your business will stay small. So thinking big and solving the bigger problems you can solve, the more money you're going to make, obviously. Let me give us some more insight, if you would. I mean, how does this type of reaction that we're talking about lead to a proper team and eliminate manager burnout?
Yeah, I think we can come at this from a couple of angles, but let's start sort of foundational level and think about the level of trust that you have with your people. Often the reason that many of our managers and leaders are burning out is because they don't trust their people enough to do it as well as me, to deliver the same type of result I do, or to have the same type of impact in that meeting or whatever it might be. So I'll just take care of it. Or perhaps there's a fear that if I let go of being the one responsible for this stuff, I won't be needed anymore because there's other people who can do what I do. So again, I keep involved in everything. And there's a variety of other contexts, but they're the common two that come up. All of a sudden, if we start to generate trust, then things start to change. And trust, we have a 7-pointed framework that we use, which is made up by the acronym SERVICE, which is our trust building process. And I'm not going to go into the detail, but essentially we start by building some psychological safety in the team. We start by setting clear expectations. We show that we are reliable. We are a little bit more vulnerable with those around them. Hey guys and girls, I don't have all the answers here, but I suspect that their answers are in the room. Who's got some good ones? Who's got some good ideas? That would be vulnerability. We're inclusive. We are making sure that we are being clear and we show some empathy. And we go into, in the Ways of Working program, we go into that in a lot more detail. But it's essentially, how do we build trust with our team? And the goal here is to build trust in 3 directions. First of all, to build trust between the team and the manager or the leader. Second, to build trust between the leader and the manager and their team. And then thirdly is to build across the team and between other teams. And what we see when we start to increase the level of trust in teams between manager and team and manager, team amongst themselves and team amongst other teams, is productivity starts to go up. Because instead of being defensive on, oh, this is my patch, stay out of it, I want to do this, or this is my responsibility, I'll take care of it because you're not up to it, we start to say, hey, I'm struggling with this, could you give me a hand? Or I'm wondering if I could get your opinion on this. And we don't feel threatened about it. Immediately where we see trust go up in teams, we can see between a 20 and 40% improvement in productivity of that team. That's the first thing we do, is get that team connected and starting to build trust with one another. The next piece of the puzzle that we need to focus on is getting the team very, very aligned. So module 1 of Ways of Working is all about alignment. And let me give you a very simple example. If I was to put you all in a rowboat, like the Oxford and Cambridge rowing race, and there's 8 of you in a boat, and I just said, right, start rowing. You could turn around, you could row in a different direction, you'd be pulling as hard as you could because you want to win the race, but there's no coordination there. And this is what we see in most teams. They all know they're in the boat. We're the sales team, we're responsible for sales. but they're all pulling at different times. They're all rowing in different directions, and they're all pulling as hard as they can to try and make a win. But they're not coordinated. They're not pointing in the same direction, and they're not saying, right, that's where we're going. And I actually worked with a sales team that had this problem. They were a large pharma company, and we said to the sales team, what's the responsibility of the sales team? What's the purpose of this team existing? And I got to make sales, to make money, to make profit, to make margin, to satisfy our customers, to build relationships, to get our inventory out the door. And I said, well, none of those are incorrect, but none of them are aligned. So if your focus is on rowing as hard as you can to get inventory out the door, that's very different to the person who's rowing as hard as they can to make profit or margin. Equally, the person who's extremely focused on building relationships with clients and customers have a very different focus to the profit-focused person. So we need to get aligned. And once we start seeing that, again, we see performance going up. And because we've had conversations about trust, we can have more open, honest conflict. We have what's called productive conflict. We war game ideas. We come up with better solutions, and then we implement them in an aligned way, because we say, okay, we're all going for profit. We're all rowing in this direction, and this is how it's going to work. And that's how we start to generate a little bit of high performance. We also have then the second and third modules of ways of working, which is around accelerate. So we do a diagnostic before the program starts, which takes people through what are essentially the gaps and opportunities in the team, what are the strengths in the team, and we completely customize the solution around that for that team in the accelerate module. And then the sustain module is, how do we keep your momentum going? Because with the best will in the world, you're going to get busy. You're going to fall back into old habits. Things are going to go wrong when we're not around to come and do an immediate workshop that day. And you need to have some sustainability in your new practices. So how do we bed those in, give you some extra tools to cope with some of the challenges, and then be available to you when you need us? And what we tend to find with most of our organizations that we work with is we have long-term relationships with them. We start on a 3 to 5 month engagement with ways of working, but we're still talking to them 2, 3, now 5 years on. Some of our clients, we still drop in, we share our new masterminds with them. We still have active relationships in the business, and we're still working with new teams. So we're showing what we're doing is making a genuine difference by working on trust, working on purpose, working on alignment, working on acceleration, and working on sustainability.
If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm on your website, jimmyburrows.com. Did I say that right? Is that where it's exactly? jimmyburrows.com, and the spelling is it, and the links are all in the notes down below. Here on this website, there's a link right up on top. Click here to download a copy of your Beat Burnout Ignite Performance. What do we get here, Jimmy?
So this is our book. So what we found essentially was that nothing we're recommending to leaders is particularly hard. It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And over the countless hundreds of teams that we've now worked with, we started to see what are the kind of 5 big things that if we work on those, it's going to make a significant difference to the performance of the team. So over Christmas last year, I knuckled down with a couple of people, and we wrote this book and edited it and got it all ready. And we released it as an ebook initially. And I'll say why in 1 second. But essentially, the book is a playbook for building a high performance culture. This is not a novel. This is not a management book per se. This is, if you are struggling to bake a cake, what do? You go find a recipe and you follow the steps in the recipe, and you have a picture of what that cake should look like at the end. We replicated that, but for high performance cultures. So we created a playbook for building a high performance culture in those 5 areas. The 5 areas being getting really clear on purpose, helping people be more abundant, which is essentially taking them out of the fight or flight, freaking out space, and making them feel happy and engaged and positive and productive. Helping them to connect more effectively. We talked about connection earlier on, building trust with each other again, but also we talk about connecting with development plans, connecting with the organization or the tribe that they've become part of. Exploration, which is all around being more curious, trying new things, how to innovate, how to develop new concepts and products and services. And downtime. Downtime is getting rest in the right way, not getting rest in the wrong way, and how as leaders can manage this. And each chapter is split up into 3 or 4 sections. At the end of each section, we have what are called action tips, and that is the recipe for building the cake for that part of the book. So if you want to get really clear on your team purpose, here's the recipe to follow, and it'll say, ask this, say this, write this on the whiteboard. And it gives you the picture of what it looks like. So when you click on the website, you get 2 options. You can either get the first chapter for free. We think purpose is so important, we should be giving it away. So we're giving it away for free. You can download that just for, if you pop in your email, we'll email it straight to you.
And that's what the, I got it, the sample. If I click up here, we
Yep.
get the sample and get the first chapter for free with your email, name and email. Easy enough. Folks, we'll be right back. We'll be right back. We're going to hear from our sponsor, Automation Booster, and we'll be back with Jimmy in just a second.
Is your business on autopilot yet? Do you have automation in place to capture, nurture, and convert prospects into clients via email, SMS, ringless voicemails, appointment setting? Get all the inbound and outbound marketing tools in one place. Go to marketingboostsolutions.com for more on automating your business so you can make money while you sleep.
Welcome back to the Marketing Boost Solutions podcast. You just heard from Automation Booster about automating your business, using a proper CRM, being able to communicate with your clients via email, text message, voicemail, broadcast, and automate the Marketing Boost incentives. Deliver them automatically with whatever your call to action is. So Automation Booster is a great plugin for those of you that are already using Marketing Boost travel incentives. We're back with Jimmy Burroughes talking about high performance culture and building a team that doesn't get burnt out at the end of the day. Looking at how to get a free version of a sample of his book, go to jimmyburrows.com. The notes or the links are down in the notes below here on YouTube or anywhere you see or hear a podcast. The links to these are below. So check those out. Beat burnout, get the first chapter free, and get your email, and you'll get on his newsletter about information on how to grow your business without burning out. Jimmy, tell us more about your high performance, building that high performance culture.
Look, it's a challenge to build a high performance culture, and I think this is why people often try to go it alone and work through a process of trial and error. And as I say, nothing that we do is particularly complicated. It's simple stuff. It's the simple stuff that really works. And we've got 6 years of proof that shows that the stuff we're doing is working, but it's not easy. And so when we are really busy, running from meeting to meeting, maybe struggling with that sense of burnout ourselves, we've got a team of people who keep leaving, so we're constantly having to recruit and train new people. We can't work out why we can't stop hemorrhaging people. We're starting to maybe see some of our peers or our colleagues leave, and that's frustrating us as well. We're feeling maybe a little bit isolated and anxious about our own role in the organization. And then we say, and now go and do high performing teams. And it's just another thing to add on the top, right? And so it is often not done really well. And the other thing we often see is that it focuses on the wrong stuff. So most organizations, when we talk to them, they say, oh, we've done high performing teams before. We did goal setting and performance conversations, and we did set these really aspirational goals that we're all going to blow out of the water. And I'm like, great, that's all good stuff, but performance comes from people, not from numbers. The numbers are the product of the people. So we need to get further back down the value chain and start working on the things that are actually going to make a difference. And so the high performance cultures that we create through the Ways of Working program are all focused on conversations with you and your team. And the reason we say you and your team is we've got a lot of evidence that shows that most leadership development programs don't work either. You send a leader off on a 5-day retreat or a monthly dial into a webinar or whatever it might be, and they get fire hosed with lots and lots of content. And then they're expected to kind of absorb that while they're thinking about meetings and the agenda and the board paper they've got to write and all the other things that are going on, and the budget and the KPIs they've got to deliver against. And so they get deluged with content from basically stuff you can find on the internet. And then they're expected to take that back to their team, translate it into their team's context, and make a difference. But when they get back the next day, they've got 600 emails to get through. They've got another day full of meetings. And by the time they get to the weekend, they're tired. And when they come back in on Monday with best intentions, chances are they've forgotten half the stuff that was shared. So we said, well, that doesn't work. So what can we do to make a difference? So Ways of Working is essentially a program where we partner with the leader and their team. We go into the organization, we do a diagnostic, we sit down with them, and we give them a really honest appraisal of what's going on, what are we seeing? And then we create the solution, which is customized from 38 building blocks that we have for that specific team. So everything we're doing now is not content, it's conversation in context. So we take the context of that team, and the problems that we're solving are the problems of that team to help them be a high-performing team, to help that organization collection of teams become a high-performing culture. Because you can't just we call it sheep dipping. You can't just send everybody through the same course and expect to get great results, because each team has different problems, different nuances, different personality dynamics. They're struggling with different things. And so what we really pride ourselves on is getting very much into the challenges of the context of that team and helping them solve them. Now, if a leader's doing a great job already, we help them to, we help validate them, we help support them. If they're struggling because they don't know maybe how to start that conversation or what it looks like, we can facilitate for them. And so we have very, very versatile coaches and facilitators who are all from industry, ex-Formula One, ex-military, ex-banking, who are all capable of saying, hey, look, I've been in your shoes, I get it. Now let's have a conversation about how we fix it for you. And here's some ideas that you can try. Everything we do solves a problem in the room that day. Everything we do also leads to commitments and actions that take place outside the room as soon as they leave. And then we have check-in processes to make sure that those actions and commitments are being fulfilled before we move on to the next part of the program. The other thing we're starting to...
So the question is, when you're hired by a firm to do that, you are, from what I'm gathering, understanding here, you're kind of not just telling the leader what to do, but stepping in and being part of the staff, helping them do that themselves, implement that, or
we come in as facilitators. So we will get everybody in the boardroom and we have a series of conversation activities, which are essentially high impact problem solving sessions or purpose setting sessions or whatever it might be. We have 38 different building blocks to choose from. But they are, let's get you all around a flip chart. Let's get some post-it notes out. Let's get some ideas on the table. Let's do some brainstorming, whatever it might be. And it's difficult to go into it in sort of detail without going into it in detail. But essentially what we're doing is facilitated workshops that help the leaders and the teams to connect more effectively, communicate more effectively, and to work out what high performance looks like. So they're all facing the boat in the same direction and rowing in the same direction.
How long have you all been in business doing this?
We're 6 years now.
Nice job. And so Jimmy, one more time, let's take a look at how do we find your book one more time. The links are down below, jimmyburroughes.com. How much is the book if we went to take action on the purchasing the book, by the way?
So if you want to download the ebook, then it's $9.99. We have a pay however much you want though option. So if you want to pay more, you're welcome to. For all of the listeners to this show, as a thank you for us having the opportunity to share this message, we also will add a coupon code. So if you use the coupon code VIP25, then you will get 25% off the cost of the book. And very soon, this book will also be out on Amazon. So if you prefer a hard copy versus the digital copy, then you'll be able to get it on Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, and Amazon.com.au. And it'll be, I think it's going to be $26.99 on Amazon.
Very cool. Let's go over this. I really look forward to downloading this myself. Looking at the 5 steps were pretty powerful here. Once again, let's take a look at that. Oops, I didn't mean to hit purpose.
5 chapters: purpose, abundance, connection, exploration, and downtime.
Here it is. That's what I wanted to take a glance at. There you go. Purpose, abundance, connection, exploration, downtime for $9.95. What a deal with the VIP 25 code. You save 25%. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Cool. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, where do you live now? Tell us a little bit more about your personal life, Jimmy, and how do you personally keep from burning out now?
That's a great question. Well, I have the luxury of living in Los Cabos, Mexico. So it is
No
the
way.
living the beach dream. I've lived in many countries in my life, but my wife is Mexican, and we have settled in. We spent most of our time in Los Cabos and part of our time in the center of Mexico in a beautiful city called Querétaro. So it's swapping the beach for the mountains and the green. But it's a wonderful, wonderful place to live, and we really enjoy not being near the tourists. We live in the locals area, but it is absolutely wonderful. We have a dog, and we have a first child on the way. So I have lots on my plate. In order to prevent burnout, I think it's important to know why people burn out. So having learned that lesson myself, I try and maintain a healthy work-life balance. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, you're always going pretty hard, but I try and make sure I do take my weekends. I try and make sure I exercise 3-4 times a week. I'm a keen runner, but I also love an Australian fitness business called F45. So I do a lot of that. And I'm an extremely keen scuba diver. So whenever I get a spare moment to get underwater and spend some time with sharks and turtles and fish, then of course you're going to find me there blowing some bubbles.
I've got to come visit you in Cabo and go scuba diving with you. I've got my PADI license. I haven't used it in a while. So
You would be more than welcome down here.
I just came back from 2 months in Mexico City. Well, I actually was bouncing back and forth between Cali, Colombia, Medellin, and then I spent a good month in Mexico City recently. Love Mexico. Haven't been to Cabo myself, actually. I got to get my tail over there and experience that coastline.
Well, come on down.
Which
We'd
is
love to see
beautiful.
you down here. And yeah, you've described some of my favorite places in the world. Medellin, I love. Mexico City, I love. So yeah, no, wonderful, wonderful places to be.
Yeah, the dollar goes a long way, so it's a great place to be that digital nomad.
Not so much
uh,
in Cabo, but yes, I know what you mean.
right, right. Oh, yeah, that's true. Cabo is not quite as cheap, I guess. What was I going to ask you? So you're running is your whole team down in Cabo, or do you run a
We're spread
virtual?
across the four corners of the planet. We've got people in the US, UK, New Zealand, Australia, and the Philippines. So we're
Now
pretty
that
multicultural business.
that sounds exactly like my company. We've got big call center staff in the Philippines, and we've got staff in Australia, and we have people around the globe, as you say. So, and most of our members are similar today. A lot of our Marketing Boost members are beginning to build their entrepreneurship from home-based businesses that have grown into, or they're full blown. Like we used to have a 10,000 square foot office in Miami, and eventually shut that down and just outsourced their staff around the world. When it comes to building that culture globally like that, what unique tips would you say? How do you handle that within that working environment, which is totally different than the old everybody's in the same office scenario?
No, really good culture. I heard I was having a conversation with a fellow thought leader the other day he's also somebody who works in the leadership development space. And we were talking about a beautiful quote that we both heard, which was, if you as the leader don't set the culture will be set for you. And so if you are the owner of your organization, it is part of your job to create the culture of the organization that you want. And let's face it, it's always better to be in control of something, to mold it in your desired format, than it is to be the victim or be carried along by the wave. It's always better to surf that wave than drown in it, right? So that would be the first advice I would have, is you need to own culture. And if you have no idea where to even start, that's where people like us come in, because we have very firm ideas on how and what works, and we can help you with that. Equally, if you probably think that you are a good communicator, then I encourage you to communicate more. Now, why do we say that? There's a really fascinating piece of research that said that one of the single defining differentiators between high performing and low performing cultures is the amount of communication that happens. Now, we're not talking about the number of emails you send. We're talking about the number of conversations you have. And there's a really great researcher called Adam Grant who said that every leader should connect meaningfully with their direct reports, their team, for 10 to 15 minutes once a week. I would encourage you to try and do more. And the old 90s concept of management by walking around is much harder to do when you're in a remote or a virtual environment. But you can still do things like having a team Zoom call where you're just all working, but with Zoom on in the background, or Teams, or whatever platform you use. It's those informal conversations that are the things that drive a really high performance culture. It's those little, oh, I heard you were working on that, let me help you with that. Or I'm struggling with this, does anybody know anything? It's the small talk that makes the big difference. And if I go back to the original piece of research, leaders are very rarely fired for over communicating. Leaders very frequently fail for under communicating. So if you are what you think is a good communicator, ramp up the amount of communication that you're doing 2, 3, 4-fold by having more little conversations, having more little check-ins, reaching out to that person who maybe is disconnected from the rest of the team because they're in a different country, different time zone. Communicate more, and watch the impact you have grow.
I've got one last question for you. That was some great insights there on how to build that culture. Thank you. The last question I'd have for you is, who is your avatar? In other words, to afford to hire your team, typically, what kind of organization can you really help best, and that can, to probably afford to be involved with hiring your organization?
We partner with organizations at multiple sizes. So we've worked with large American banks with hundreds of thousands of staff. We also have one of our longest standing clients is a construction company in Scotland when we started, he had 5 staff. He's now got 25 staff. So we know how to work with organizations at scale and also in what we call a boutique arrangement. And so what's more important, what we look for are the leader or the manager in an organization who are running around just so busy, so frantic, and they're thinking, I don't know how I'm going to keep this up anymore. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I've got any more gas in the tank. And I'm seeing all these young thrusters coming up behind me, and I'm worrying about it. I'm worrying if we're going to hit our numbers this year. And they maybe have been passed over for promotions in the past. So, I wanted to be the CEO and I didn't get it. And I've missed it this time, and I'm starting to think maybe I should go somewhere else, or maybe I'm losing my touch. So we like to look for those people. They're super busy, they're super occupied, they're involved in everything, and we love to partner with them and show them a new way, which takes them essentially from being a really, really busy operations manager, and it's not the job title, it's the activities they're involved in, to being a full-on high-impact leader.
So you can work with an individual as well.
Yep, we still do have a couple of one-on-one clients, and there's people in the team who specialize in one-on-one mentoring. Equally, if you are looking for something where you want to boost your team, we can offer that. The third option we have is we actually next year we'll be launching a community where leaders from all over the world can come and connect with leaders just like them and have conversations about it. But yeah, what I would say to anybody who's thinking, do you know what, that sounds a little bit like me, is reach out to me via LinkedIn. We have a link in there. You can just book a free 30-minute call where we get to the crux of what's going on in your world right now, and we'll offer you some solutions. We don't try and pitch you, we don't sell you, we just listen and we help you with some ideas. And if you think that's valuable, then we can share with you some more information about how we can work together.
Very cool. Thank you, Jimmy. This has been very insightful. A lot of great content on how to be a proper leader, how to build a culture of performance. Look for jimmyburrows.com. The links are below. The links to his LinkedIn is below. His Facebook page is below as well. You want to reach out to him personally, or go to his website and download a free version of his book, or for $7.50 approximately, you can get his ebook if you use the code VIP25 when you click on his use the code VIP25. That'll be in the details in the links below as well, or the content below. Thank you. If you like the content we brought to you today, folks, please like, share, and subscribe. If you thought this was cool, share this with some other entrepreneurs as well. We'd really appreciate that. Also, give us a review or comments below on what you thought of this content. Jimmy, I thought it was very powerful, very informative on how to build that culture, whether you are a virtual organization or you've got an office full of people or you're on your own one-on-one struggling. Jimmy and his team can help. Thank you so much for everything, folks. Thank you for listening to our show. And don't go away, Jimmy. We'll be, for everybody else, click on the link above and watch the next show. Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Boost Solutions Podcast with your hosts, Captain Marco Torres. Now it's on you. Take the next step now. Go to marketingboostsolutions.com for more on how you can wow, delight, and surprise your clients with the most amazing draw card on the planet. So stay thirsty, my friends. Stay thirsty for knowledge. See you next time.